Good morning everyone, and welcome to another short tutorial video. We've had a request or question from one of the subscribers asking how to firstly register the RTK2go service, or how do you push data, your correction data, to a particular mount point or NTRIP caster. So getting that data online. Also going to show you some updates to uCenter that I see a new version has been released, so quite a few changes in terms of the configuration, and then finally a demonstration of how we incorporate that correction data with our own implementation of a RTK GPS, so using a cell phone application to get that correction data fed into the GPS receiver. So first off, with RTK2go, if you have a link at the article, also I'll add that to the description, so you can have a link to that. RTK2go is a free caster service, so we have our NTRIP caster, or the base station, at a fixed location, and we push that correction data to a service, in this case RTK2go. So it's a free service to use. Anyone else can make use of that correction data if they're close in the vicinity, and really a great service to utilize for your own projects, and especially for research that we focus on. It's really handy. So if you scroll down, or rather first go to the uSNIP.com website /RTK2go, you can read a few details here of the service. And if you look over here, there's a link that says click here to register. You have to register an account to push correction data to a particular base station. You basically the administrator or the owner of said base station, so you're the authorized user to push correction data to that. And of course, users of the data, they can access that data stream without passwords or having to register an account. So it's as simple as that. So I've already opened it up in a new tab, so have a look at the link over there, and basically you just need to fill in your details, where you're from, some contact details. Email is definitely required. There's some communications that will take place, making sure that you get up and running as soon as possible. And in particular the mount point name, so in our case this is Engineering 4, referencing the Engineering 4.0 facility where we are located here at the University of Pretoria. So you can specify your mount point that you want there. Just have a look in the description. Avoid common names such as base to avoid conflicts with other existing mount points. Just use something unique. And then of course the password, make sure you write that down. Once you start using the caster service, which I'll demonstrate shortly with our caster, you will need to enter that password to make sure the correction data get to the server. And there's a few other details and things that you can also read in there. Pretty self-explanatory, and a lot of information on the website that will assist you to get up and running. So after that, and you can also see you'll get a temporary password, but with the email communications, you'll see once you set that password, then you are good to go. So once you have those details, I'm logging now into the NTRIP Caster computer that's currently located here at Engineering 4, just for ease of use. And I mentioned a bit earlier that there's a new version of uCenter that's out, a lot more GUI orientated, to just have a bit of a better user interface. So you will see that I'm already connected to the GPS receiver, COM port 4 over there. You just click add new device, select the COM port, and it should be connected automatically. Once you click on device configuration, similar to the configuration view of the old uCenter configuration video, I'll put a little link in the video that you can follow if you want to see what the old version looked like. And then you will see the configuration menu, and the flag names stays largely similar. And the easiest and quickest way is just to filter some of the data for NTRIP casting purposes. Just search for T mode, and that's basically where you'll find the CFG-T mode, or configuration of the time mode. That's where all the settings for the NTRIP caster is that you will need to enter. And there's been some small modifications. In my personal opinion, it's not improved all that much. In contrast, I think it makes it a bit more ambiguous on exactly the values you need to enter. And it does help if you have the data sheet of your particular GPS module handy, as some of the conversion factors that you'll need is normally located in there. So for us, we have the ublox, let me just double check here, it's the F9P module. And one thing to look out for, or maybe let's just start from the top. So the mode is currently T mode 2. Have a look at the old videos on what exactly those configuration settings are. But this tells the GPS receiver we're at a fixed location. Use this particular location coordinate, and you're static, you're not going anywhere. Position type, we have that as 1, and note that we have both the RAM and the flash. So flash is the permanent storage or memory, and RAM is the volatile temporary storage. So the thinking behind this is, if we have a restart or power failure or something along the lines of that, 99% of the time we will have the caster at the same location here on campus. So if it restarts automatically, we want those settings to be reinitialized, so we don't have to do this manually every time. And as an example, if I click on the mode flag over there, and for some reason it is significantly slower than the old version, especially on a low powered PC that we're using, which is slightly frustrating. But you can see there we can select from a drop down list of values. So again, we had a fixed location, so just give that a moment, and we select both the RAM checkbox and the flash checkbox, and I can clear any existing messages here. And if we say set those two flags for us, we can just click the send button, and it will update the registers or the flags on the module itself. In terms of coordinates, we can specify that as either latitude, longitude and height, LLH, or the ECEF, Earth-centered Earth fixed coordinate. In this case, I prefer the LLH, as that is the coordinates that's provided when we do survey ins, as detailed in some of the previous videos. And you will also notice there it says L4. As far as my understanding goes, that's just to say it's a 4-byte value, or 32 bits in total, because we have to represent a very large number normally to accommodate where we are on the Earth, positive 90 degrees or negative 90 degrees at the poles, with sufficient accuracy. And this is why I mentioned to have a careful look at your data sheet. You will see, unlike the previous version of uCenter, it's no longer specified as a float value, or in our case we're 25.74 degrees south of the equator, so it's no longer minus 25.74. You have to represent this value as a integer value, or signed integer value if you will. And again, while I said reference your data sheet, this is you take that value and you multiply that by 10 to the power 7 in this case, both for the latitude and the longitude. So for example, it would have been 25.741781 degrees south, but if we multiply that by 10 to the power 7, we're basically going to shift the decimal place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positions, and then we have that full integer value. And it's the same case for the longitude, and then 28 degrees east of the Greenwich meridian. We're slightly ahead of Greenwich mean time, GMT plus 2, so positive values when we're east of the meridian over there. The same applies to the height value, or the elevation above sea level. We're 1,373 meters above sea level with the antenna, and again you'll see it's a long value 4, so again we need to provide a assigned integer value. Of course, we should always be above the mean sea level, so positive value, and this is times 10 to the power of 2, so that's why 1373.06 meters. We take that, we multiply that by 10 to the power 2, or 100, and we have the value of 1373.06. So those last two digits are effectively your centimeter range, if you will, but we just don't see that comma after we multiplied the value. So make sure these must be whole numbers. If this is entered incorrectly, I have had crashes initially when playing around with these numbers, and yeah, just trial and error to get the configuration correct. So that's why I said the new version is slightly more ambiguous than the old. It's just much easier if you can write the float values as is without having to dig through the documentation. And then the last configuration, in our case, it's the positional accuracy. I believe that is 10 to the power 1, or you take your value in millimeters and you multiply that by 10. Or if you look in the data sheet, I believe it's specified in centimeters times 10 to the power 2. So we know the positional accuracy is about 1 centimeter. We multiply that by 10 to the power 2 and we have a value of 100 over here that we've specified as the accuracy. So once we're done configuring all those flags, I'll just close this menu down. And you will see that our NTRIP Caster, the position is reflected correctly there. So just to double check that on the menu, you can again see the satellite position overview, some additional details here of the satellites. So again, it's just more visual or GUI based interface. So let's just close the COM connection to that. I'm just going to close uCenter. Let's just say that's safe for now. Alright, so now we go back into SNIP. So at this point in time, you would have registered your NTRIP Caster. You would have had now your base point name, in our case Engineering 4, your password that you're going to keep secret in this case, and just make sure you note that down somewhere. So in terms of the serial stream, we can have a look at that caster entry. So this is where we're getting the data from our device. So again, my mount point name I specified as Engineering 4. It's just easy if you keep it the same for the serial input, and then for the caster going out to RTK2go. We're currently located in Pretoria in South Africa, and we see all of these GNSS types, so that's 100%. In the location, we specify that accurate to 2 decimal places, just for coarsely specifying where we are located on the Earth. Again, watch those minus and positive signs, and we should be happy with that. So we're going to reconnect to that. So again, the serial stream, this is coming from our GPS receiver, and we can see that we are successfully getting data. If we right click and say show the RTC M3 correction messages, we should see those there as well. So this is already a good indicator that we will have RTK functionality. And then for the push out streams, let's just have a look at that. So over here you will specify what is your selected input stream, the mount point name. Normally I just keep that all the same as was registered on RTK2go. And then RTK2go, over here it's the remote host rtk2go.com. The port is 2101. Your super secret password goes over here, so I'll just blank that out. And once you're ready to go there, we will just right click and say connect, and just give that a few seconds. So if we go back to a web browser while that is starting up, you can go to the status page and you will see the link over there. You can normally just replace your caster name over there, in this case Engineering 4. So let's just give that a refresh. And if we scroll down a little bit, you should see that we just initiated the caster. So I'm just going to keep on refreshing the page. There we go. So you will see it's still in the startup phase, so normally we'll just give this a minute or two, and you should soon start to see the satellite view count. So the more satellites we see, the better. There's GPS with GLONASS, Galileo and Beidou, and there's the messages coming in. Once we start using the service, you should also see data out to client. So once you have a client connected, it will also log how much data is being used, and it's always handy to keep an eye on that if you're successfully pulling data from the server. So just refreshing the page, still in startup mode, but it's still starting to look like we at least see some satellites over there. The positional information as specified earlier, you will see that these values match the ones we specified earlier with using those flags to configure the GPS module. And we can see the total message count increasing slowly. If I just keep refreshing the page, there we go. So once you see that we are receiving these RTCM messages, so once this appears in the caster entry, then you know we are successfully receiving those corrections. And after a couple of minutes, this startup phase message should disappear. And I think with that we are ready to go to show how we incorporate this with our physical receiver. So shortly I'll be cutting over to a short video just to show what the hardware looks like, how we physically have the hardware implemented to receive the corrections, and then we'll head on outside to have a clear view of the sky and then show the performance without the corrections, and then with the corrections in action and how we configure that on our Android device. So see you there. Alright, so over here we have the our RTK rover, or the client, the NTRIP client that we're going to use. And with this implementation we are using a microcontroller from SparkFun. This is the SAMD51 Thing Plus over there. To that we have connected a SD card so we can log some values on the go if you want to store geolocation information. We have some LED connections over here, and you'll see the status one just shows every time the microcontroller tries to take a reading. The trigger, this is our external trigger to record some data. And then the accuracy LED, it's just specified the more it flashes, the higher the accuracy. If it stays lit solidly, then we know we're within 20mm accuracy. So we just have a little display over there, just for convenience, showing the number of flashes and then the accuracy that we're currently receiving. Right now we're in an office, so we're not going to have very accurate readings. We're going to go outside shortly. But there you can see there's the GNSS module, and connected to that we also have the trigger for the I2C button board, so just to check when we do in fact have a trigger, but I2C. And then finally we have the Bluetooth module over here, and these wires connect directly to the input of the GNSS receiver. This is basically a UART connection, so Bluetooth take that correction data we're going to get from the RTK2go service and physically push that into the GNSS module to incorporate those corrections. And with this Bluetooth receiver we're going to use the Android app. We're going to configure the settings there to use our corrections from the caster, goes over the air into the Bluetooth module, and then finally to the GNSS receiver where it will incorporate those corrections. So quite simple to use. We can package everything up in a little module like this just for easier mounting. We have the trigger and we have the ublox antenna over here that supports all the constellations and the frequencies we're interested in. And we are ready to go.
Hi everyone, we're currently standing outside here, Engineering 4. To my left hand side is the data house with the NTRIP Caster. We've got here the NTRIP rover, or the client that we want to use, already with the antenna mounted to the top of the pole. And on the phone I'm going to record exactly all I'm doing, and I'll just overlay that onto the video. So the first thing that we need to do, we have the Lefebvre NTRIP Client app open, correctly if I pronounce that incorrectly. So first things first, we're going to have a look at our NTRIP settings, network protocol. I've got that as revision 1. We've got the RTK Caster IP as RTK2go.com, and the port one's an N2101. In terms of username and password, we don't need to specify anything there, as we're not going to push in any data, we're only going to receive them. The data stream, if I click on there, it'll ask me for a list. It's a good thing that we see Engineering 4 there. That means that we're currently online with our caster in the data house over there sending data. The reported location, you get that from the external receiver, not the phone's GPS, but the one mounted on the pole. So once we have that configured, we can have a look at the receiver settings. So the receiver is via the external Bluetooth module that I showed a bit earlier, that's inside of the box, and the Bluetooth device you already see it's that specific Bluetooth module that I have. It might be slightly different for the application. and all the other settings are basically kept the same, other than anything there. And you can also, of course, allow GPS mark locations. That's handy if you have some other application or mapping application that you want to use for your surveying. You can access that this GPS data will have RTK directions. On the display settings, the info box, I normally like to use that at the latitude and the longitude, just so we can have a look at the currently specified details, also the elevation and the horizontal degree of precision. Okay, so with everything configured, we said we want to get the data from RTK2go from Engineering 4's mountpoint. If I click connect, it's first going to try and connect to our rover. That's correct. We'll see the network connecting. We can start seeing some data coming in. It is connected to the caster, so that's a very good thing. And then on the top left corner, you see RTK 12 satellites currently being utilized, so that's great. And you'll see the last decimals of the latitude and longitude, it's almost stationary, which means you have very good RTK lock, so not a lot of deviation, even if you're standing still with the pole. So just as a nice validation or to show how accurate this works, to my left hand side, over on in that direction, that's going to the north or closer to the equator. So if you have a look at that negative 25 degrees, that last 3 digits, it's currently 400, so negative 25.74249, 400. And if I lean the pole slightly towards the north, you will see that the value will go down, as it should, because we're moving closer to the equator. So there you'll see it's down to 200, about 250, the last decimals. Going back to vertical orientation, we're back to about 400. And if we move slightly further south, then you'll see that number go down to 500, 550, so moving away from the equator. Similar, I'm looking in the direction of the camera, going that side, that is east, where the sun is currently rising. So again, that 28 degree point to 5904567 degrees, we will expect if we move towards the east to go further away from the Greenwich meridian. So if we push it slightly east, you will see it goes up to about 800, those last 3 digits, then back to vertical orientation, and then moving slightly back, then we go down to about 400 as we move further west. Same applies to the elevation. You'll see jumping around between 0.6.7 meters, the 1348 meter elevation. If I lift the antenna slightly, about 100 millimeters, you'll see it goes up to about 0.6.9. If I move it back down, then you will see it should go back down to about 0.7, 0.650. Up again, you see it goes up. Bringing it back down, you will see reduces once again. The horizontal degree of precision, the smaller that value, the more accurate it is as far as I understand. And as long as we keep on receiving data from the NTRIP Caster, going to RTK2go server, connecting via mobile connection, and finally pushing the correction data to the Bluetooth receiver, we now have this RTK functionality. For our implementation of the hardware, we of course have the trigger button, so we can just push that if we want to log some data to our SD card, or we can output that data to serial to use for whatever application we want to use there. So with that, that's a wrap. Thanks for watching the video. Remember to leave a comment if there's any questions or suggestions. Any knowledge that I have, I'm always happy to share. I hope this video helps someone else to get their own RTK setup up and running. So thank you.